There once was a prince. He was not what the king and queen had wanted, nor wished for when they asked the fairies for a child. The king could tell right away by his disinterest in drinking, fighting, or riding. He'd rather read about trees or history. He read everything but strategies. Even when he came of age, he took no interest in women. This is when the queen became concerned and sent for the fairy that had granted their wish. However, she did not consult the king, who had not told her that once he had realized the boy was not as promised, he sent some knights to raid some fairy nests and hollows. They were not keen on him. A fairy came nonetheless. Her name was Romana, and she listened to their concerns with great care and poise. "He does not care to appease us. All he does is read. This was not what we envisioned for our son. We wanted a strong and capable leader, not one with no interest in fighting and riding and wooing women. He might as well be made of stone," the king said with great passion, albeit suspicious of the surprisingly earnest fairy. "Yes, he even turns from my love. He shows no affections. He cannot be the prince promised to us," the queen added. "Stone, you say?" Romana raised an eyebrow, glossing over the queen's plea. The king saw her interest. "Yes, he shows little interest in anything." "Have you asked him why?" The king and queen looked at one another as if this was not an option. "We have not." Romana rose and nodded gravely. "I understand what needs to be done. May I speak with him?" "Of course, he's in the garden. He's studying where the new saplings were planted, I think." The queen was quite excited by sharing this. "It is my favorite spot on the entire grounds." Romana smiled as she bowed. "Naturally." She moved to the door and noticed the pair begin to follow. She paused and gave her best large-toothed smile to put them at additional ease. "I think he and I should be left alone." The queen nodded accordingly. The king was unsure, but conceded when the queen put a hand to him. Romana's smile never left as she skipped out to the gardens and easily found the prince, admiring the horizon, book in hand, sitting upon a bench. "What is your wish, sweet prince?" "My wish? Did my parents send you?" The prince did not remove his gaze to take notice of her. "I have no wish but to keep study of this horizon while they make their plans with my life." Romana walked to him and placed an arm on him. The prince felt a numbness in her touch as she continued. "May you never move from this spot." And that is when the prince was cursed. "May you watch over this horizon as you have wished for as long as I live." Fairy Romana kissed his forehead, then thought, "Or at least until you understand love." He blinked as she disappeared from the garden. The world slowed down. He blinked again. The prince felt heavy, like stone. He wasn't sure of the order of events anymore. He dropped his book to the ground, there next to the bench under the yew saplings. The light breeze was touching his face no longer. Cries of his mother broke his ears. Offerings laid at his feet. The offering stopped. His mother stopped coming to see him. Even less he remembered after that. Day or night was indistinguishable. Leaves came and went as the sun would set then rise. The land aged and trees grew. Those yew tree saplings grew into the tunnel of yew trees, continually blooming in a silent spectacle all for him. He did enjoy their company so. "Evening! Who have we here?" An older woman's voice came as she gently cut away the ivy covering his face. "I think I may have found a handsome prince under all this foliage." An ages-old weight lifted in mere seconds of selflessness. "Didn't mean to surprise you," she continued, though he still said no word. Motheringly, she picked off a few stray vines with such natural care. "I wonder if you have anyone to speak to. I know I usually do my work in silence, but I've been lonely lately." Startled by this direct address, Barlow the prince remembered much more. Even his name. It may not have been very princely, but so much time had passed, he wondered if he had ever been a prince at all. In his days, Barlow looked her over. Her garb was unfamiliar, but he guessed her some sort of maintenance worker. Maybe this newcomer was not as old as he thought. Her eyes were hard, but were not deterred by this. "I always wonder if stone works as such you were dreaming. Must be nice to dream in a place such as this." A wheelbarrow sat behind her, full of lanterns and gardening equipment. "I know I am just here to hang the lanterns for the celebration, but..." She stopped and looked around. "I haven't been out this far before. It's charming." The gardener took a quick breath before she retrieved a stepladder from the wheelbarrow to fix the lantern to the yew tree canopy. "Normally they have me inside serving the dinner, but they didn't want me with those dignitaries, not for this part of the celebration at least." Despite this off-handed remark, she did not seem defeated. Barlow thought this showed great character, and wished to have a word with the head butler. There seemed nothing wrong with this woman to change her duties. As the sun dipped, the sky blazed with oranges, ambers, umbers, and even a hint of purple. It caught her attention, and she shared his silence a moment as she sat with him. "My wife lived for moments like this, crisp air, a beautiful sunset, and good company." "She sounds lovely," Barlow wanted to say. "She was enchanting. Even from the moment I met her, I knew she was for me. Gone a year now." "I can see you miss her." "A marvelous cook, and..." She paused briefly. "She would say, 'If you're not too long, I will wait for you until my last breath.' I thought it very romantic, even if someone else had written it before." Barlow was struck. How moving. She sounds like no other. This worker sighed and realized herself. "Look at me babbling." She wiped her nose absently. "No worries, milady." Quietly she stood to continue her work. "I know you're thinking, back to work, Iona. You have to hang these lanterns." "Iona, that's a good name." "I wonder what your name is, and whose likeness you are supposed to be, if you were kind, generous, had a family." Barlow felt constricted by the word. Family had meant honor and duty to him once. He wished it had meant love. But in all the books he read, he realized his parents' views of love were different than his own. He realized now that what they did, they thought they did out of love. He could not fault them for their ideas of love, and he could not blame them for not knowing he didn't want anyone to love. He should have told them. He should not have been like the stone his father saw him as. Iona finished hanging the lantern, then turned to him thoughtfully. Taking the knife from her belt again, she cut away the last of the overgrown vines and tossed them aside. "There, that's much better now, isn't it?" "Much better." "My gift for listening to the troubles of a castle servant." Iona turned around to pick up her wheelbarrow, leaving the knife. She wandered off to her next destination. Slowly, Barlow stood. his old bones cracking, finally able to move again. Quietly, he examined the vines that had grown over him, their stalks bending in his hand. To feel them made him want to weep. "Oh, hello, sir," Iona said, curtsying. "Pardon, I left my knife here." It took her no time to realize. "Thank you, milady. I had been sitting long." Confused, Iona retrieved her knife. "I am no lady, just Iona." "I am Barlow." "Barlow? That reminds me of the first prince of this castle, from the old tales." "And what do they say happened to him?" "Not sure. It may have something to do with that evil fairy that just died. I don't know much of my histories." "Has that much time passed? Am I an old tale now, a history?" "If it is you, you look very well, sir." Iona gave a shallow curtsy. Barlow bowed his head. "You don't need to do that, but thank you." "Have you been sitting here all this time?" Barlow looked around, inhaling the sweet air of the evening as if he hadn't done it before. "You know, I believe I have." "Was it the fairy?" A short beat before Barlow shrugged. "I think it had to do with my father, to be honest." She moved on back to the wheelbarrow and picked it up, seemingly leaving Barlow behind. After a few steps, she motioned him on. "Well, if you're not too long." "You would like some company?" "I'm always in need of good company, particularly of old souls. And you can tell me of these yew trees. I imagine you know them well." Barlow smiled politely, his face hurting less as the motion came to him. "We do know each other well."